It all started from a seemingly ordinary moment. No major announcement, no warning. But in just a matter of hours, BTS's V dominated the global conversation. International media outlets raced to report. ARMYs worldwide responded. And one question continued to echo. What really happened? Behind the cameras and headlines, there was an atmosphere far from glamorous. Those who know Taehyung know, he's not the type to easily reveal the burdens he's carrying. But this time was different. There was a heavy silence, as if something truly big was happening. And then, Jungkook. Usually full of smiles and energy, this time he seemed unable to hide his emotions. His eyes welled up, his voice trembling. The tears weren't just ordinary tears. They were an outpouring of feelings he'd been holding back. Many ARMYs admitted to crying too, sensing there was something more than just the news. The situation became even more poignant when Park Seo-joon's name was dragged into this whirlwind of emotions. The friend, known for always being by Taehyung's side, now displayed a grief rarely seen in public. Without much ado, his attitude only made many people more convinced. This wasn't a trivial issue. ARMY began putting the pieces together. Old video footage. Cryptic statements. Undisguised body language. And from there, a heart-wrenching realization emerged. This isn't about hype. This is about real human feelings. The world may see them as superstars. But beneath that, they are still human. Who can get hurt? Can lose? And cry. This story isn't over. Many facts remain hidden. And when it all comes to light, maybe no one will look at BTS's V, Jungkook, and the people around them the same way again. There was no lengthy clarification. There was no firm denial. And it was precisely that silence that made it all feel even more real. ARMY began to realize something that had been bothering them from the start. This was too quiet for something deemed unimportant. Usually rumors would be debunked. Issues would be cleared up. But this time, all there were expressions, gazes, and emotions that couldn't be hidden. Some old footage resurfaced. Small moments that were once considered normal now felt different. The way Taehyung paused longer than usual. The way Jungkook looked down, took a breath, and then smiled, a smile that never quite reached his eyes. And when Jungkook finally appeared to cry, many understood. It wasn't a fleeting cry. It was the tears of someone trying to be strong when their heart was already too full. ARMY was torn between curiosity and protection. On the one hand, they thirsted for the truth. On the other hand, they were afraid that the truth would be even more painful. Park Seo-joon, who had always been known as a calm and mature figure, seemed to confirm that premonition. His gloomy demeanor, his curt words, and his heavy expression left many speechless. No one dared to speak out loud. But everyone felt it. Something had changed. Not just with BTS's V. Not just with Jungkook. But with the dynamic that had always seemed solid in the public eye. And perhaps the most painful thing was the reality that not everything could be shared with the world, even though the world felt it had a right to know. Now, ARMY could only wait. Waiting with prayer. Waiting with hope. Waiting while wondering. Will they when everything is finally revealed? Be ready to accept the truth. Days passed, but the tightness didn't go away. Every time Taehyung appeared on screen, it felt different. His gaze was deeper, his smiles more fleeting. It was as if he was holding a burden he couldn't explain, even to those most eager to understand. Armies began to read the little things they'd never noticed before. The tone of voice. The pause before speaking. The blank stare captured on camera for only a split second. And Jungkook. He still performed, still professional, still smiling. But everyone could sense this wasn't the same Jungkook from before. His tears, which were captured on film, weren't the end, but rather a sign of the beginning. A sign that there were feelings too great to keep hidden. That behind the grand stage and the cheers, there was a heart struggling to keep from breaking. Some armies began to whisper. If they're silent, maybe it's because it hurts. Others replied, if they're crying, then it's real. No one wanted to jump to conclusions. But empathy actually unites everyone. Not to demand an explanation, but to make space. Park Seo-joon is once again a figure of concern. He doesn't say much, but his mere presence is enough to make it clear that Taehyung isn't alone. And for many, that's both empowering and heartbreaking. Because if those closest to them remain silent, it means the wound is no small matter. Now, the world waits not in uproar, but with bated breath. Waiting to see if Taehyung will speak. Waiting to see if Jungkook will smile carefree again. Waiting to see if all of this will end with clarity, or just a wound learned to accept. One thing is undeniable. That day not only shook the world, it also changed the way everyone viewed them. No longer just idols, but human beings with real feelings and stories they weren't necessarily ready to share. Armies began to stop asking what was happening and began asking how they should behave. Because the longer they observed, the clearer one thing became. This wasn't a drama to be consumed, not a sensation to be chased. This was a fragile phase. A phase where one learns to stand. When the world's spotlight feels most dazzling, Taehyung chose to remain calm. Not because he didn't care, but because not all wounds can be healed with words. Jungkook slowly smiled again. But armies knew. Behind that smile was a long process that the cameras couldn't see. And Park Seo-joon was still there. Silent, loyal, strengthening. Sometimes that kind of presence is the most meaningful. There was no big announcement. No dramatic confession. Just the passage of time and hearts trying to reconcile. Perhaps the world will never know the whole story. Perhaps some parts will remain secret. But one thing is now undeniable. That day taught everyone to see them in a more human way. Not as a symbol, not as a rumor, but as a person who can get tired, can get sad, and can cry. And if one day Taehyung chooses to speak, or Jungkook chooses to remain silent, ARMY is ready for one thing. Not to judge, but to be there. Because after everything that's happened, what matters most isn't the answer, but how love and empathy persist, even when the truth feels hard. This story may never truly end. But since that day, one bond has become clearer.